Hello, welcome to another video from the conscientious biologist, Ben Gallagher. This one's the second one in the blood series, and this one looks at the kidney as the main organ of the renal system. Now, the renal system is a really vital system in your body that keeps your blood clean and regulated. This is from the GCSE specification, and as always, I will ask that you please do subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't done so already. Thank you. So we've said that the renal system is your blood cleaning system, but let's put it in position here on a person. It's in the lower half of your body. You've got two kidneys that you should recognize as those brown lumps, and they sit kind of in your lower back. If we enlarge this picture over here, and we'll label the kidney because you recognize that bit, we can now start to think about what the kidney does. And the kidney has two main functions. The first one of which is to clean the blood by removing the urea. The second one is to regulate the water level so it doesn't mess up with osmosis and so it doesn't pull water out or put water into the surrounding body cells. Let's just focus on that urea for a moment though and talk about where that came from. Well, when you eat food, you eat proteins, you digest the proteins, break them into amino acids which go into your blood because your cells all need amino acids. They need them, of course, to build proteins, and proteins do everything for your body. But if there's an excess of amino acids in your blood, they can act like a solute and draw water into your blood, increasing your blood pressure, which is a dangerous thing. So the liver takes care of that by pulling any excess amino acids out, breaking them apart, and the waste product is urea. So urea is a waste product of the breakdown of amino acids done by your liver. But you can't allow urea to build up in your blood because it's a toxin. So that's where the kidneys come in filtering out. So let's talk about how they do that. So we'll start off up at the heart. Blood's going to come down from the heart down through this main blood vessel called the aorta. If you remember, the aorta comes out at the top of the heart, then goes down the body, branching off as it goes. Well, some of those branches are going to go to the kidneys, but consider the blood that's coming down. We know that blood's oxygenated. If it's just come from the heart, that means prior to that it went to the lungs, to the alveoli, picked up all the oxygen it needed. But that blood's also going to contain the urea because the liver will have put urea into the blood will have gone back to the heart, gone to the lungs, now coming back out. So we know urea's in there. It's also going to have an unregulated water level because you absorbed all your water into the blood in the large intestine. Remember from our digestive system lessons, the large intestine allowed water to soak back out of any food or drink into your blood to keep you hydrated. But sometimes too much goes in, so again the kidneys have to sort that out. So that blood's going to come down through the aorta. It's then going to branch off the aorta, so it's still the two little red branches that are partly hidden. Those are the renal arteries, one going to each kidney. Now they'll take blood into the kidney and the blood will circle around in each kidney, which is where these two things happen. That's where the urea gets removed. It's where the water gets regulated, but we'll talk about those in the next slides. When it comes out of the kidneys, it goes through renal veins. That's the two horizontal blue bits, and they join together to make to join the vena cava, and the vena cava carries the blood back up to the heart. Now that blood in the vena cava should now be clean and regulated with water. It will have lost a lot of its oxygen because the kidneys will have used a huge amount of that oxygen, but that's fine because it's on its way back up to the heart, and from the heart it always goes around the lungs before then being sent back around the body again. Now let's think about what the kidneys did with the waste that they removed. They're going to have removed the urea and they're possibly going to have removed some of the water. Well, that waste drains out of those sort of greyish tubes that come out. Those tubes are called the ureters. Okay, each one is a ureter, and the ureter carry the urea and the water down to that big bag at the bottom, which is the bladder. When you're ready, when the bladder's full and you can feel the pressure, you then get rid of those wastes through the urethra. That's urination because those wastes, the urea combined with any water, is called urine. Okay, so this is the whole renal system there. You could be asked to label it, so make sure you've taken a screenshot of this. Just for completeness, actually, if you look at the kidneys, you can see that sort of white blob on top of each kidneys. Just to link this up to what we've done on endocrine system, those white blobs on top of the kidneys, those are the adrenal glands which produce adrenaline, which we looked at in a previous video. So take a screenshot of this one for your notes, and then we'll move on to how the kidney cleans the blood and how it regulates water. So if we look at the kidney in a bit more detail, and we're going to talk about how it cleans the water out, cleans the urea out first. This is something called selective reabsorption. Now, when I teach this, I always give my students an analogy of how I clean out my garage. Every couple of years, my garage at my house gets totally messed up. There's too much rubbish in there. There's my kids' bikes, there's gardening stuff, there's the lawnmower, it's chaos. So every couple of years, I take everything out of the garage and I put literally everything out on the driveway. And then I select what goes back in the garage and I put it away neatly. Anything that's left on the drive is clearly rubbish and stuff that we don't need, and that goes to the tip or to the recycling. Okay, but it's the fact that I got it all out and then selected what I put back. That's exactly how the kidney works. So if we pull back the renal system up here above me, but if we enlarge a diagram of one of the kidneys, it looks a bit like this, and you can see the renal artery, the renal vein, and the ureter coming out of it. But if you looked inside a kidney, what you actually see is loads and loads of tubes. You can see the renal artery going into it here, branches out into loads of little tubes, and those link up with loads of other little tubes, and the tubes just get smaller and smaller, and tubes go around tubes. Okay, now those tiny tubes inside the kidney is where all the business happens. That's where the cleaning and the regulation takes place. Now those are called kidney tubules, or more specifically they're called nephrons. Now for GCSE you only need to know them as kidney tubules, tubule being a general name for any small tube, okay, but they're actually called nephrons. Now what happens when the blood goes into the kidney through the renal artery? It cycles around, but while it's doing that, everything gets pushed out of the blood. So the capillaries that are running through there, everything gets pushed out and goes into the tubules. So these tubules are kind of like the guttering on your house. They're like the drainage system. Okay, now that process of kicking pretty much everything out is called ultrafiltration. The only things really that can't get pushed out are the things that are just too big to be pushed out, like red blood cells, white blood cells, platelets, any really big protein molecules like hormones. They're going to be too big to get filtered in ultrafiltration and pressed out. But just like me emptying my garage, that's everything, get everything out of the blood. That's all the glucose, all the salts, all the amino acids, but all the urea as well, but also pretty much all the water. It all gets kicked out. Then what happens is the useful stuff is reabsorbed back into the blood, and that's selective reabsorption. So the blood went in, everything got kicked out into the tubules, and then the blood took back all the stuff it needed. So it took back the glucose, it took back the amino acids, it took back all the useful nice stuff, but it left behind the urea in the kidney tubules. That means when the blood leaves through the renal vein, it's only the good stuff that you wanted to selectively reabsorb that's still in the blood. All the waste, the urea that was left in the tubules can all flow together, join together, and they leave the kidney through the ureter along with any excess water. Now that solution, that urea with the water, that's called urine, and that gets stored in the bladder. Okay, so the kidney cleans the urea by this process of ultrafiltration to kick it all out, but then really importantly selective reabsorption to pull it back in. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. Take a screenshot of this one for your notes as well. So that was how we regulate the urea and get it all out. Now let's talk about how we regulate the blood, the water level that's going back into the blood. This is osmoregulation. Now this is another example of homeostasis. If you remember back in our endocrine lesson from the body communication, we did quite a lot on homeostasis. I deliberately left this one out because it's a slightly different system and I want you to learn it specifically as it applies to the kidneys. So in your blood, you can have a low water concentration. Now that's not good, because if there's low water concentration, it could mean that there's just not enough liquid in your blood. So you'd have low blood pressure, which is dangerous. Or it could mean that there's way too many solutes in your blood, which need to be diluted because they can be dangerous in their own right. So if there's low water concentration in your blood and that is detected and you're dehydrated, then your pituitary gland, which is one of your main endocrine glands in your brain, the master one, your pituitary gland secretes a hormone called ADH. Okay, ADH stands for anti-diuretic hormone. Okay, remember, anti means something like stop that, prevent that, do the opposite of it. Diuretic, anything that's diuretic causes diarrhea, which think diarrhea is basically water loss. So anti-diuretic hormone is stop water loss hormone. You're trying to stop water loss. That's what ADH, anti-diuretic hormone, does. So it's secreted by the pituitary. It travels down to the kidney, kidney being its target organ, and it tells the kidney to selectively reabsorb back as much water as possible. Because if you've already got a low water concentration in your blood, you don't want the kidneys to remove more water and send it down to the bladder. So you tell the kidneys, quick, when you're doing selective reabsorption, get as much of the water back as possible because we can't risk losing it. Now, if you get lots of the water back, that means very little water is being drained out of the kidneys down to the bladder. So it means that your urine is going to be highly concentrated. It's going to have a lot of urea and not much water. So your urine would be very, very dark. It would be dark yellow, slightly brownish, orangish. That's not healthy at all. That's a sign of major dehydration, which is a killer. It's a really, really bad thing. However, if too much is kept in, your blood water concentration could go quite high, or it could just go back up to a normal level, which is great. Now, if it's at a normal level or a slightly high level, your body's not too bothered. So the pituitary just doesn't secrete ADH. There's not an opposite hormone here. It's not like in blood sugar regulation where we had insulin and glucagon as the opposites. This homeostatic pathway, which is why I wanted to keep it a bit separate, is either keep back all the water or no, we're fine, don't do anything. Okay, it's just that the pituitary says, no, we don't need ADH this time. Without ADH, the kidney removes water from the blood, so the kidney does its job. The water goes into the tubules, drains out down to the bladder, you get rid of that water, that's fine. Okay, if that happens, that water's gone down to your bladder, it's diluting the urea, you've got nice, very pale, very clear, your urine ought to be pretty much totally colourless and transparent. That means you're not dehydrated. But of course, if you lose too much water through that process, you can be dehydrated again and get a low blood water concentration. Okay, so take a screenshot of this because this is the homeostatic pathway. But really what we're talking about, it's barely even homeostasis, because really it's just that ADH is a crisis hormone that works to reduce the risk of dehydration. So you can almost put this in the same category as adrenaline, where there's a stressful situation to the body. In this case, it's dehydration. So you release a hormone to cope with it. When that stress situation isn't there, you don't release any of that hormone. Just like with adrenaline, if there's something scary, you release adrenaline. If there's nothing scary, you just don't. Okay, so it's closer to adrenaline than the other homeostatic ones, which is why I've kept it a bit separate. But still really important to take a screenshot of this one, please. Last slide, and it's really quick. If we've just explained then how the kidneys are so important, the whole renal system vital for your survival, it prevents the buildup of urea as a toxin which can cause blood poisoning, it stops you from getting dehydrated or overhydrated, it's really, really important. Then we need to quickly talk about what happens with kidney failure, because sadly sometimes kidneys, that they're an organ, they get used all the time, they can get damaged, they can break down, they can fail and stop working. Now, one of the key things that you can do if you've got kidney failure, so if your own kidneys can't clean and regulate your blood, is you can use dialysis. Now, dialysis is a blood cleaning machine. This is a picture of one. So you can see a person here, they're plugged into the dialysis machine, which, as you can see, blood is taken out of them through a tube, their blood goes into the dialysis machine. But it's a closed loop, because if you look at it, you can see that whilst blood's coming out through the tube that goes down then over their hand and into the machine, it's coming back out of the machine and back in. So you're basically incorporating the machine into your circulatory system. It's not that all your blood gets drained out of you and cleaned and then put back in, because you'll die if all your blood got drained out. It's just you're integrating the machine into the circulation that's going on around your body. In other words, the machine is acting like an artificial kidney. Okay, now how this works is that the blood travels through tubes which are made of partially permeable membrane, just like cell membrane. Now, when those tubes are traveling through the machine, they're traveling through a liquid called dialysis fluid. Okay, so there's the tube containing your blood, but the tube is surrounded by this dialysis fluid. Now, the amazing thing about dialysis fluid is that they've exactly matched it to the solute concentrations in your blood. So it has exactly the same concentration of glucose, salts, and other solutes in the blood. That means there's no concentration gradient between the concentration in your blood and the concentration in the dialysis fluid, which means if there's no concentration gradient, you won't get any net change in diffusion. Yes, diffusion might happen, but it would happen equally in both directions. So glucose won't move out of your blood, it won't be removed, it won't be lost, it won't be gained. But really importantly with dialysis fluid, it has no urea in dialysis fluid. That's really important. It has all the other things, all the things you want in your blood, it matches them, but it doesn't match urea, it has none. So that means there's a high concentration of urea in your blood, but a zero concentration in the dialysis fluid. So that should be pretty obvious what's going to happen. The urea will leave the blood because it has this concentration gradient, and it's only urea that has this concentration gradient, so it's only urea that's going to be leaving. So it's not like kidneys, it's not that you get everything out and put everything out and put back what is good. In dialysis, you only take out the bad thing, but that's urea, and it's done by only having a concentration gradient of urea. Hopefully that makes sense. It's quite simple, it's quite obvious, it's a brilliant piece of kit, and it is absolutely life-saving, because without a dialysis machine to clean your blood, the ureas would build up, would poison you, and would kill you. Okay. Now the problems with dialysis machines is you obviously can't be sat there hooked up to this machine forever. It's quite a big piece of equipment. So what happens is that you have to go into hospital or to a dialysis centre every few days to have your blood cleaned. When you come out, your blood's beautifully lovely and clean. Over the next couple of days, any excess amino acids will build up. You will start to slowly get a little bit poisoned by the urea. So that's when you go back into hospital, get it all cleaned again. Okay, so rather than continually cleaning it like your real kidneys would do, dialysis does it every couple of days. Now, the obvious thing to do, though, is to regulate the amount of protein you're eating, because remember, urea comes from excess amino acids, which come from too much protein in the diet. So if you're on dialysis, you'd limit your protein level so that your body's making less urea, so there's less to clean out of it. Now, this is a brilliant solution to the problem. Okay, however, you can't stay on it forever. It becomes less and less effective. Your body becomes more dependent on it. You can't stay on dialysis forever. You can do it for quite a long time, but not forever. So your best long-term solution would be a kidney transplant. But of course, that's major surgery. That means opening you up, well, getting a kidney donor, finding someone who has got a close enough genetic type to you that their kidney won't be rejected by your own immune system, hoping they will donate you one of their kidneys. And this is at least the good thing with kidneys, everyone's got two of them, so you don't have to wait for someone to die to have a transplant of like a heart or a liver. You could get one kidney off a living person if they were a close enough match to you, but it's still major surgery. It still carries lots of dangers. You could still reject the kidney, which means your immune system attacks it if it isn't closely matched enough for you. But dialysis, or ultimately a kidney transplant, is how you would survive kidney failure. That's it for this video. So very short playlist on blood. It was only those two ones looking at what's in blood and the different systems that are very heavily reliant on blood or heavily involved in the blood system. And then this one talking about the kidneys in more detail, because that's a really key part of your course. From here, I want you to switch units entirely, and I would recommend, if you're following the playlist as recommended in one of my first videos, then now head to your ecology unit, which starts with ecology 1, food chains and trophic levels. As always, please do subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't done so already. It really helps me to build more if I've got more subscribers. Give this video a like if you find it useful, and do try and find me on Facebook to find all the various infographics of more random bits of biology that I've posted on there. Thank you.